on our way to go see a ghost town in Montana.
It's our very first.
Very excited, have about an hour drive, so we'll catch you then. So neither of us really know what to expect from a ghost town. From my understanding, it's basically a town that was just abandoned because like the industry or something left.
Normally whenever mining left, especially given the area that we're in.
So, but then my question is, if it's a ghost town and people are visiting it, does it still make it a ghost town?
It's a good question.
Like if it's like a tourist attraction, like people are clearly still going there, so was it really considered a ghost town, or is it just like more like a monument at that point?
I don't know. Apparently it's considered like the most complete ghost town in, I think, the US, but honestly we would have to check. And by that I think they mean like it has the most of the original buildings, but still nobody lives there. I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna be crowded. I don't know if it's gonna be literally a ghost town and there's just us wandering around empty buildings, which actually be really entertaining and kind of like sketchy.
That's what I'm hoping for.
That'd be a little sketchy.
That'd be a lot more fun. I think it'd be more interesting. It is really expensive though. I think it's like $3 a person.
I don't even know if you have to pay for it.
We talked to our financial advisor and I think we can fit it in the budget.
It might be free. I honestly have no idea. Like, we're going in relatively blind. Should we have looked at more stuff? Probably.
I think that we should actually move into the town because then it wouldn't be a ghost town. And I'm sure the property value is really low. So it's really affordable.
True.
Apparently the ghost town has hours. It's open 9:30 to 4:30.
And it's like, what time are we supposed to arrive? I think 3:15.
3:15.
Classic.
So, but there is, it looks like one main hiking trail is like 3 miles. So we might run it so we can see everything.
Oh, no. And we determined it is $3 a person, so he was right.
Just past the sign that said it was actually $10 a person, which is like triple the value of what it originally was. So this better be worth the extra $7 a person.
Best, the ghostiest town that could be towned.
Exactly. And apparently the road we're on right now is 70 miles per hour speed limit. But look at this road. That guy might actually be going 70. But it's like 20 miles an hour unless you drive off the road. Just arrived at the ghost town. Got an absolutely prime parking spot right in front of the bathrooms. Always good to know. Turns out it's actually free because we have that pass. So it turns out it was actually a gold mining ghost town.
They were able to extract $950,000 worth of gold. This is whenever gold was at $17 an ounce. So nowadays it'd be worth a ton more.
Millions. So, and I don't think it actually has like really a closed time. There's no one like here watching it. So hopefully we have time to explore the whole thing.
At its height, there was 1,000 or so people living here, and it was actually really well developed for a town of this time. It wasn't necessarily like kind of the gold towns you hear of where everyone was like shooting in the streets and saloons and stuff. It was actually a town with real families and things, which I think is one of the reasons why it thrived so much and for so long. But in 1898, it had 1,000 people, and by 1905, it only had 100.
We also just learned that it actually had 13 saloons.
So it did still have the saloons, just less of the gunslinging, I think, than some of the other towns nearby.
But apparently it also had a school and a couple hotels, so it was like
candy shop, a butcher shop,
doctor's office, so it sounded like it was one of the most developed ghost towns.
Well, it wasn't a ghost town at the time.
Developed mine towns, just like of the time and in the area, anything close. It actually had, I think, a railway or a road built to Helena and another town nearby, so which sounded like it was pretty rare from the sign. So there was a fire in 1912, according to this sign and other things we read, and there was actually buildings all right here that all burned down because there was no water to stop the fire. And actually what saved the rest of the town is there was a road that divided the space, and if it wasn't there, the whole town would have burned down. Right next to the fire sign, there is a water spout. Bet you they wish they would have had this. They have Haley's favorite thing ever, information. Also important to note, there is a visitor center. We did go into the visitor center.
They're very friendly.
Very friendly, very helpful. They gave us a ton of information. Turns out gold is actually $2,300 an ounce right now. So if that were what it was priced at, like in today's, with how much they mined, it would be worth like hundreds of millions of dollars probably. Not $1 million, which they almost pulled out.
We also learned that you can still mine for gold and silver and copper, all kinds of different things here along the Continental Divide, which we're very, very close to. And we've driven actually across a couple of times before in Yellowstone. So that's really interesting to know in case we decide to switch careers.
It sounds very lucrative and easy to start.
Of course, yes, absolutely. They also have this really neat demonstration there about the different densities of copper, silver, and gold. So you can kind of get the idea of what each one of them would weigh. And gold weighs a lot. Fun fact, those gold bricks, super heavy.
So now we're in what is like the general store. You can buy anything in here, from like gunpowder for mining, like lamps and tools and things like that, to clothes and pens and
meat, all kinds of food.
So very cool. They still have like a lot of the things in here, which is very cool. And actually goes into a second room where it's like everything on display.
Oh, this is really cool.
And then they said once this like went out of business, it was kind of the start of Garnet's ghost town thing, because it was kind of like the last or only store in town, and no one really bought it and redid the store. So then everyone just slowly ran out of supplies and left, it sounds like. There's also this like back room in here. Don't know if it was like a cellar or something, but it is like
very chilly.
10 to 15 degrees colder than everything. And there's even like a chute out there that goes out. So I'm assuming like hay or something in here.
Yeah, something must have been stored in here. They wanted to keep cold too.
So now we're in one of these saloons.
This is the Kelly Saloon.
And like we said, there was 13, and mainly for men, because women didn't want to ruin their reputation and come in the main floor.
So this particular one had a back entrance that would take you upstairs, and then they could hang out with the landlady instead of being in the male-oriented saloons.
So they wouldn't lose a reputation, and it actually stayed open for a couple of years after Prohibition was enacted.
So clearly not that like strict out here.
The wallpaper on this building too is like old newspapers. Sounds like they date back to like 1920s, which is kind of crazy. So we also just learned that after all the miners lived here, families came in and actually bought these buildings and kind of like renovated them and put in walls to make it their houses.
Right, but it was still a pretty empty town since, like I mentioned before, almost everyone had left by around 1905.
Now we are in the Wells Hotel, which we learned was like really, really fancy. It was made with the quality to be made in Helena, which was like legit
The
city.
town at the time, I guess. So one of the things I think is really cool is Cooper walks from the kitchen into this gathering space. As you can see, a lot of the different wallpaper on the walls is still here, obviously very faded and very water damaged, but it's interesting just to see how that's kind of lasted. And in some of the rooms, there's different layers of wallpaper from previous installations of it over time.
And it sounds like they also had it with backed like cloth or something. So it was their insulation. They didn't have insulation, but the wallpaper was their insulation.
For this space in particular.
And in here we have a huge kitchen with a lot of the original tools that they would have had. So a huge oven duct there, and back here there's just a nice pantry or guest bedroom or something in here. Now we're on the second floor, which has all of the rooms, and as you can tell, it's actually a pretty big, spacious room. That one might have been like a maid's room or something. This is probably what the hotel rooms were actually like. So, pretty good size. Honestly, not too much difference from like hotels now or motels now, really.
One of the major differences though is you had to go out back for the bathroom.
And apparently, towards the end of its life, the mattresses started growing mushrooms out of them, which was probably the final nail in the coffin for the hotel. But every room has like a desk and a mirror and little shelving and bigger than a twin-sized bed and a nice window with views of what I imagine would be the huge town of Garnet when it was thriving.
One of the things that BLM, which is in charge of this land, tried to do is really keep it as simple as possible and use all the materials that are already here. So they haven't really replaced almost anything at all, including this floor, which is actually in really excellent condition. There's a couple of rooms you can't go in because the floor is out, but almost all of this building you can just walk around in, which is quite amazing considering its age.
Yeah, you can come up onto the second floor, and it looks like you can even go up the third floor. And we just came up onto the third floor, and it was actually a big space, which was like the common living quarters for poor miners who couldn't afford a private room.
Significantly less quality as far as no wallpaper. You're just rolling out your bedroll on the floor, and they're kind of marking out what area is yours with these small wood pieces. So pretty simple in comparison to the very ornate wallpapered rooms downstairs. But they say that one of the things that they did get up here, which was unique, is they had these skylights, and that wasn't something you could find anywhere else in Garnet.
Apparently the room also wasn't heated with the fireplace. The only thing that heated it was just the natural hot air rising, which probably didn't get too hot in the winter, so probably has some chilly nights.
It's pretty warm right now, though.
It is very warm. It's definitely the warmest room in the building. Thinking about the hotel and just all buildings in this area, it's right there. The higher the ceiling, like the fancier the building it was, the more money people had in their house. And in the hotel, it was like 10-foot ceilings in every single room. So very luxurious building at the time.
That said, as we descended on the stairs, Cooper almost hit his head on the second floor. So I've decided I don't think he would make a very good miner, as the spaces would be even smaller.
Yeah, we figured I would get stuck in the mines and not be able to get out. And I wouldn't find any gold either while I was down there. Now we're walking into the Blacksmith. And funny enough, this building never caused a fire in town. But the building next to it, I believe, did cause a fire and burn down the Blacksmith owner's house.
Yep.
Which made him move into the hotel. But it's really cool. You can still see all like the equipment that is left and
some of the wagon wheels. The blacksmith was a major part of the community because he was in charge of forging items for the mines, making sure all the axes were sharpened, doing wheels and horseshoes for the horses, and anything else you could imagine that was forged at the time, which was basically every piece of metal, it seems like. One of the things I think is so cool is this particular piece of metal, which I'm guessing is an old piece of a wheel, and the tree has literally grown around it. So I am insanely curious how long this has been here. We are headed to the school, and like the kids, we decided to walk uphill both ways.
in the snow. Just kidding. It's not snowing right now, but apparently it can snow here. I guess it is September, so it's really not that early for snow. But we just went to the jail. I was back there, and apparently it was more like a drunk tank. No one really ever got arrested. They just kind of handled everything with what sounds like a promise and a handshake. And if anything, to get more serious, they were shipped out. So it actually was turned into someone's house that they lived in. So
the schoolhouse behind us was built in 1938. And one thing to mention, like we said, in 1905, there was only 150 or so different individuals living in Garnet. But there was a second boom of gold in the area that brought people back to the town. From what we gather about the late 1920s, we haven't seen any particular years specific to that or how many people ended up here. That second boom only lasted a short time, so it was much shorter than the original amount of people that were here in the original time period in which they came. But at the time, they did build a second schoolhouse here to house the kids, as this was one of the few mining towns in the area that was considered safe and pleasant enough where families actually wanted to flock here instead of just crotchety old miners.
And so as we're walking down this path, we're noticing that there's lots of trees. And you can see this one here is a pine tree, and you can tell that because of the way it is. Here's just kind of like the outside of a lot of the buildings of the town that we've been walking through. So now we're entering into the area where all these little cabins are. And there's one right behind us that is a verified miner's cabin. And you can see it's very short. It's like maybe 7 feet tall, 8 feet tall. At the top of it is. And inside when you go in, it's a small door. And this is pretty much it. It said they built them pretty much as fast as they could, and so they could spend more time mining. They leaked a lot, they weren't super warm, and if you put too much firewood in your stove, the cabin would burn down, which did happen a couple of times.
Something to keep in mind is some of these miners had families. Like we mentioned before, Garnet was known for being family friendly in comparison, so some of these are a little bit bigger than others. As you can see, this particular room has a porch, number of rooms in the back, and it even still has some clothes hanging up on the lawn. This is the Adams family house, and as you can see as Cooper pans around, this is actually one of the nicer homes in this area. It's got 2 rooms, but you also have to keep in mind that this was the whole space for a family, as in 2 parents and their young daughter. And for 6 years, this also was where the post office was as well. So that's a lot going on in a very tiny area.
This house really is just like monumentally bigger and wider and feels more like a home compared to the other miner homes. But like Haley just said, more than just like one person was living in here. It's probably like, I think 3 or 4 people with the parents and the kids. But one thing that was really exciting is they had a covered walkway path over to something I just want to point out, the outhouse, which has 3 sections in it. So you can have group family poops.
cabin actually has a really unique history. So it started out as a miner's cabin, and then Frank Davy, who pretty much has his name over all of the Garnet area, ended up purchasing this cabin and turned it into a newlywed cabin, so that new married couples could come and live here rent-free actually, so they were able to build their own place, or until a new married couple came in and kind of took their spots.
Honestly, pretty cool spot. Wish this would have been available like when we just got married. I think it would have been cool to listen to coyotes as we're trying to fall asleep. Haley?
We'll see.
She would have gotten on board with it if I told her it was free. One thing we kind of keep talking about is just how cool it would be to be back in here during like when it was thriving, when there was 1,000 people here and there was horses and kids running around, and that'd be one of those areas that'd just be really cool to really like travel back in time.
Yeah.
And to just watch everything happen.
Absolutely. Just to get to like stand here and kind of be a fly on the wall and hear the music and the sounds and the stagecoaches going by and the kids playing in the fields and things like that.
We also said it would be a great place to start like reenactments of the time.
Yeah.
So if you are able to organize something like that, hey, check out Garnet Ghost Town.
As we say goodbye into the ghost town, I want to thank you so much for watching this video, and stay tuned for more to come.
Yeah, be sure to subscribe and look out for the next one. One last thing just wanted to point out is the visitor center did close at 4:30. However, they didn't kick us out and it's still light out. So it's like 5-ish and we're still here. So you can stay after 4:30.